Hello everybody, welcome to this introduction to LunarisScriptables. I will in this video go through very shortly what LunarisScriptable is and how you easily set it up in your own project. Currently I am in a completely new project that I just created, and I think the version is 2022.3 indeed. Which is also the version that LunarisScriptable is recently updated to be the minimum supported version. It should work with older versions of Unity 2, but it's not officially supported anymore. Unity 6 and newer should also work without any hassle. So first of all, when you have bought the assets, obviously go to the package manager where you find all the things you have bought on the asset store. As you can see here, I search for Lunaris and it shows up as the first option over here. Simply just download it as you would normally, and after the download has completed, it shouldn't take long, simply just import the assets and then you're ready to go. When you have imported LunarisScriptables, you will see it has created a new folder called Lunaris and a subfolder called Scriptables. All necessary files for your project will be in here. You can go ahead and delete the demo folder if you have no interest in the demo files and demo projects I have created in there, and I would heavily recommend you to delete this folder as it only contains bloat and unnecessary files. So have a look at it and then delete it afterwards. So what is LunarisScriptables? LunarisScriptable is a system designed to make working with scriptable objects in Unity simple and efficient. It should be easy to use whether or not you are a beginner or experienced developer in Unity. And it will help you create, test and manage scriptable objects much more effortlessly than before. Some of its features include event-driven architectures and generally cleaner organization of your projects, such that it can be much more modular. It will also make you less reliant on things like singletons and easier to debug overall. It's all about making your workflow much smoother and your project more manageable when you use LunarisScriptables. So first off, let's see what LunarisScriptable is adding to the engine. First off, if you go to project settings, you will see a new folder up tab here that adds a lot of options and settings to how LunarisScriptable should behave and how the code it generates should be generated. You also have in here in the generator settings a lot of paths and so on that you can change to your heart's content. Everything in here is mostly just naming and path conventions of how you and where you want your script to either be named or where you want them to be placed. All the settings in here comes with a tooltip that slightly explains what each of them do. Bear in mind that some of these are still a bit experimental and may not entirely behave as expected, but it is something we are working on. When you first install LunarisScriptables, I will recommend you clicking this button right here, generate classes for all built-in .NET types. This will simply just generate all the base types for LunarisScriptables, so you basically will have ints, doubles, floats, strings, everything you can think of will be generated and lay in this generated folder, where you can see that it has all the variables, events, and so on. More about those later. The next thing LunarisScriptable adds to the engine is if you go to Tool, you have a new context menu called LunarisScriptable Code Generator. If you go in here, you can see that we have the possibility to create scriptable objects. We have a bulk scriptable objects assets creator. We have a scriptable or LunarisScriptable generator. So that's basically for all the generators over here. More about that in a moment. We also have converters, actions, functions, and coroutine generators, which all individually creates, for instance, converters, actions, functions, and coroutines that can be used as scriptable objects in your project. So now let's say that you want to create a scriptable object. First off, you go into Scriptable Object Generator, and let's say we want to create the scriptable object weapon, for instance. And we want this to be in scriptable object / weapon. Now, go up and say add a variable. Just say, for instance, here under none that we want a string. See, it should be down here, yes, and we say field name would be name. And we want another one saying, for instance, float. And we want this one to be damage. Now we just click in the bottom here and say create scriptable object. And we will see that it's starting to compile now, waiting all that stuff for Unity, and then in generated in a moment here we should be able to see our new class. If we go to scriptable objects right here, you can see that it has added the name and the damage as a thing in here. We can now easily go in here to create and go up into scriptable objects and weapon. And we should be able to see our new scriptable objects in here. However, if you want to create multiple at the same time, we want to go back into the generator tools and we can go to the bulk creator and we can actually create multiple in here by just going here and saying weapon and give it a name. For instance, we can call this one a mace. We can take the other one or one more and say want a sword. And maybe just for fun of it, let's also make a axe. If we create these now, you should be able to see that it is here. And if we go into here, we can see that it has created all the scriptable objects, and we can on each of these set the values individually. So I've gone into the scene mode here, and I want to show you how you can set up a very simple score label for your game using LunarisScriptable Object. First off, if you already went into project settings and clicked the generate all built-in types, then this step is not necessary, but I want to show it because it will be important to use later on if you want to use more complex types with LunarisScriptables. So first off, again, go to tools. In here, LunarisScriptables and the code generator. Let's go to LunarisScriptable generator and say add. I want to use it for a score label, and usually in most cases we want to display that as an int. So I will search for an int, and if we look here, we have int. It may also show up as int 32, or if you want a long or int 64, you may also be able to go in and look for that one in there. But first of all, there's a lot of checkboxes here, as you can see. For this example, I just want to have a variable and some event listeners for this simple one. So collection, let's just tick one off. We can always go back in here and generate it later. So collection event, let's take that one off, well, and events listeners and so on. If we just say generate, it will generate the files. And of course, they will be put into the generated folder. So with the LunarisScriptables that we have just created, let's actually put them to good use. First off, let's go in here and create just a simple Qt for this example. And I will also in here create a enemy. That would be a new script. So I would create an enemy script. There we go. And this is going to be a very simple demonstration on how you can use it. So when you get into the script, you want to add in the using lunaris.scriptable. And this is where it can be a bit hard to say which one exactly. In this case, I want to use the observable variables. I will show you more about what you can use later, but for now, let's use the observable variables because this one is the one that is event driven and is reactive to when it changes values. Now if we go down here and say serialize field, and then say the observable int value, as we can see here. And we call this one, let's say score, because that's what we are going to use it for, to keep track of a score. And now I wanna use, just to very simple demonstrate, the unmouse down. So this is basically when you click one of these 3D cubes. Then I wanna say score.value, and I wanna add, let's say 100 to the score when you click on a cube. There we go. So if we go back into Unity and we select our cube enemy, we can see that the score observable int variables has been added here in the inspector. And as you can see, we have a plus icon. If we simply just click this one, it will automatically create the scriptable asset for us. And if we scroll down here, you can see that the editor is a bit wonky in small or very zoomed in environments, so you may need to slightly readjust the editor to best suit your need. So as you can see, we have a variable or value, which is basically just what the value of the score would be at any given time. But we also have a lot of events here that we can use to handle change to the variable itself. So we have the changing event, which is happening before the value is actually changed. So you can handle different things before the value itself has changed. And we have after it has changed, and we have the change. The two first is a bit more complicated, and I will go into more detail about that in another video. But now we will use the change, because basically the change is just taking the raw value and sending over the event, where the changing and changed is more before and after values and some extra addition to what have happened to the object during that time. If I again just click the plus icon down here, it should create the event. All the events is laid up here, and if you also look at this one, you can see we have the embedded the scriptables into the inspector itself. And if you change something in here, obviously it will also change in the scriptable object itself. So now with the variable setup, how do I actually display it on screen? I go over here and just create a UI text, and I will just use the legacy for this example because it's easier. I will create a new script here called score label, I think. Script score label. Let's actually capitalize it. There we go. Score label. And I will just add it directly onto the text itself, and then wait for it to compile. There we go. Cool. So now I will go in and fast up here. I will again say using LunarisScriptables, and this time I am after the event listeners right here. And down here I want to get the int event listener right here, and I will just call this one score listener. There we go. And remember to have serialized field on it. Important. Now this in itself should almost be enough. There is a bit more, but I will show that in a moment. I will go into the editor first and show this. Now we have the score listener right here, and as we can see, we can click here and actually add the event that we created before. It will start listening to that specific event. And just to show how smart LunarisScriptable actually is, we actually have this add dynamic event callback. Basically what this button does is that you can click it, and then you can select any of the scripts on prefab or object over here, and you can basically say, I want it to create a callback method to this specific script. So if I just take the score label, you should see that it starts compiling, and in a moment it will also have the code available in Visual Studio for us. You can see it's right there. It says that it's not implemented. That's fine. We just go ahead and in here we say get component. text from the Unity Engine UI, and we say .text directly as it is here equal arg.toString. Args being the parameter right here where it takes in the change that happened to the ball. Let's save that and go back into Unity. Now we should see that everything here is set up. Basically how the event works is that we tell it, okay, we want to take an event that we have set up for one of the scriptables, and then we want to hook it up to something that Unity understands, in this case a Unity event that we can have in our code itself. You are also able to hook in directly through the programming to events in there, C# events, but that's a bit more advanced topic that will be for another video. Right now you may just think, okay, we are ready, let's test our game, and then you will notice when we click this one, even though something should happen, nothing does happen. Why is that? When we use the event listener right here, we actually want to start it first. So let's first make a void onEnable, and then we say score listener dot register listener. There we go. The reason for this is so you can easily and fast say, hey, I want to have this one enabled right now or disabled. We also actually for this one wanted to be or have the on disabled. Let's say, oh, private. There we go. No strings. Want to say score and unregister. This is not necessarily necessary to do, but it is a good practice to disable it in case that, well, for the garbage collector to take it and so on. So now everything should be up and running now. And now we try to test the game. Let's click it and see what happens. 1000. There we go. So now we can see that the text is slowly increasing each time I click the cube in here. And that is basically how easy it is to set up something. And you can also see over here that we do have the score right here, and you can see that it changes over there when I click the cube, so you can actually keep track of it over there as well. What if you do not really want to test the game, or you don't want to run around in the game, you just want it very fast to test it? Well, in that case you can simply just take the event that is hooked up right now. You can either do it by the embedded editor, you can also do it directly on the text, for instance, or in this case also the cube enemy we have. We can just go down here, but show you very fast here, you can simply just click the execute event button right here, and you should see that we can change it to the event in there. So it's an easy way to test if the event is working as expected. Obviously, an event or this execute event button only works in play mode, so if we were to shut down and try to run it, it should have some issues. It basically does nothing. We are working on maybe adding some text there where it says you must be in play mode, but yeah, just note that it only works in play mode for now. When we start the game up, you see it just says new text. Maybe we want something a bit more exciting, so let's go in here and again just say get component. I know that this one could just be saved somewhere in a variable, I know, but if you say text, let's see, we want actually to get or have the score itself. So if we go up here and say serialize field and say observable int variable, and we just want the score one. Bam. Let me say score dot string. I made a small mistake here. We actually need to say score dot value dot string. There we go. If we fast go up here and just say hey, yeah, there we go. It's all up and running now. We click it. If this one is a bit daunting and a bit annoying that you need to take all that extra, you can actually also just in, let's say, the enemy do it easily as well by saying score dot value equal to, let's say, 0. We can reset it to 0 when we start the game and so on. And that should completely work as well. If I go in and actually change, let's say, this one to not do that, Let me click play. It should basically do the same now. There we go, 0. Shut down and start up again, and it should say 0 again. Perfect, just as we want. The last thing I want to show as well is that we do have the possibility of, instead of coding in the event listener into our script, we can actually use a mono behavior down here that is just called int event listener behavior. And we can add that directly into here. It's exactly the same as you see right here. So if I go in here and fast just comment this one out, there we go. We also want to comment out this. Perfect. Now you see it disappear from up here, and we have our behavior script here instead that we can work with. It's the exact same thing. Just go in here and say, okay, I want the score event to be added. And now I can click the add dynamic event callback easily from here as well. I can also do it here. It should not overwrite, it just checks, does it already exist? So if I just click right here, it just adds without actually overwriting anything. So if you already have added the code for events and so on, and used the standard naming conventions that we have, you should be able to really fast to set up the event multiple places or change around really fast without compiling as well. And just to show that it still works, there we go. Perfect. So I hope this video was informative and you learned some basic about LunarisScriptables. We have not dived too deep into the more advanced topic in this video, and this is just the beginning of what you can do with the LunarisScriptable. It is kinda the fundamentals right now, but it also some of the fundamentals that you will use the most to actually create games. So I want to make more videos that showcase what LunarisScriptable is actually capable of. There is much more and much more advanced topics to take into account, but I will also try to make some shorter videos than this that just fast focus on what each component can do and help you on your way in your development journey. Again, I hope you learned something, and thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.